on the News Channel 5 network. This is MorningLine with Nick Barris.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Nick Barris with you on this Thursday, and good show on tap. We've done our share of some holiday shows and the like, but we've had some of our regular guests on this week. We had Davidson County Sheriff Darren Hall on earlier this week, and we're going to talk this morning more about the concept of medical malpractice and the fact that there are some new developments in terms of some interesting cases that our guest is going to talk about that I think will be of interest, especially to many of you, because of the region of the country we live in and our proximity to Fort Campbell. You'll see what I mean in just a moment, but we'll open up the phone line 737-7587 if you think, okay, you have a situation you're dealing with. And I had a few calls in my newsroom with people inquiring about medical malpractice cases, and I told them to call today. So if you're there, give us a ring. If you think there's a case where you've been done wrong by a hospital or a doctor, we'll see if we can help you this morning, because what's better than free legal advice from an attorney like Clint Kelly? Good morning to you, sir. It's good to have you on.
Yeah, you got your Christmas shopping done?
Yeah, I'm kind of Christmas cash, but kind of. Is yours done?
Mostly.
Really? I'm curious. At this time, for most lawyers, with what you do as a medical malpractice expert, is it slowed down right now?
It does.
Like everything.
Yeah, it does. A lot of us in our we're kind of a tight-knit community.
Yeah.
A lot of us start to slow down and kind of put things off until after the holidays. In fact, you don't really try any cases. When I started practicing, we had trials set up all the way to Christmas Eve. We don't set trials that close
Is that
anymore.
because of you, or is that because the judges are all taking off?
Well, yeah, right. That's part of it as well. But we all want to take some time off. And if you got a juror on there that's thinking about their Christmas shopping and their kids coming home and they've got to decide a big case, that doesn't work.
Well, we won't see you again until the new year.
Correct.
But just as you look back at 2019, and we're about to embark on a new decade,
right.
I'm just curious. I was going to have you, spitball here in terms of your view on how this last year went with regard to the law, medical malpractice, your take, and where we're going maybe into the new decade.
Yeah, the more things change, the more they stay the same, Nick. I think that we're seeing, in fact, I was just reading this morning on AP's wire about medical malpractice cases. We are seeing a increase year after year after year of the number of claims that are being made, the number of injuries. It's still now the third leading cause of death.
Medical malpractice.
Yes, behind cancer and auto accidents. Still the
ahead
third.
of heart attacks.
Correct.
Holy cow.
Correct.
The third
I
leading
think
cause of death.
cardiovascular disease now has gone below medical malpractice. And the other thing that's changing here in Tennessee, I think, I'm going to make a prediction. The Supreme Court heard arguments back in September as to whether the caps on damages, the government imposed caps on how much a patient can recover, where you and I have discussed about they took away from the jury the right to decide the upper level of non-economic damages, and the government said, we think we know best. The Supreme Court has heard arguments to decide whether that was an unconstitutional violation of our Tennessee constitutional right to trial by jury. It's under the Declaration of Rights that was enacted in 1796 when we became a state. And I believe we'll get a decision this spring, and from what I'm hearing through the grapevine, I'm anticipating that this Supreme Court will strike down those caps as unconstitutional.
Wow. So as we go into the new decade, meaning that then it'll be left to a jury to decide how much someone deserves?
Correct. It will be left to the jury rather than the government, which I think is where it's supposed to be. That's kind of small d Democratic or small c conservative. I've told you many, many times, and I think it's common sense, if a jury can be trusted in Tennessee to decide whether someone lives or dies by death penalty, surely they can be trusted to decide what the proper amount of damages are in a case.
Was there some, and I guess it comes from lobbying from those who are tired of getting hit with some of these large jury verdicts, but I mean, can a jury sometimes give an absurd award where it's just so much over the top? I mean, I guess if I'm on a jury and someone loses a leg and they're suing, well, what's a leg worth? Well, a leg to me is priceless. Yeah. And then, do you put so much? Were some of these juries at one time giving just absurd verdicts?
Yeah, when was the last time you saw an absurd verdict?
Oh, I can't think of one, but I think that's because of the caps.
Well, no, the caps don't change the verdicts. The verdicts are what they are.
So I guess I mean the awards from the verdict. There's a guilty verdict, and then here's your award on damages. And, you said, well, was it $100 million? Well, you don't see those anymore.
Well, you do, but in different states. You don't see them here in Tennessee. Tennessee juries don't give absurd verdicts of money.
Okay, so
if they did, you'd be reading about them. Because, see, the jury enters a verdict, and then the judge knocks it down below the caps.
Oh, okay.
First of all, there aren't many cases going to trial
So the
anymore.
jurors don't know there's caps sometimes.
No, they don't. They're forbidden under the rules of evidence to even know about them.
Okay, and real quick, a cap would be what in Tennessee?
$750,000 on pain and suffering, loss of enjoyment of life, disfigurement, burns, things of that nature. It can go up to $1 million for paralysis, or if you lose an arm and a leg together, or if you are the surviving spouse and have 4 minor children. Those are the exceptions. So let's just say, for example, a client is paralyzed because a hospital fails to diagnose and treat an abscess or infection that crushes the spinal cord and puts let's just say, a 25-year-old man in a wheelchair. Okay? The legislature has said in their infinite wisdom that person is limited to seeking $1 million for everything else other than medical expenses and lost earnings. Now, I've represented paraplegics before, and they're all different kinds of people. But one thing they have in common, no matter how much spirit they have and no matter how much they soldier on, it is an incredibly depressing injury to be confined to a wheelchair the rest of your life, because it covers everything. You can't control your bowels, you can't control your ability to pee, so you're incontinent, you lose your sexual ability, and for young people that could, anybody's devastating.
Sure.
People have been married. For the government to say we know what the right amount of money is, not the rest of us like jurors, I find offensive. And more importantly, it's against the Constitution, because our forefathers, when they created our Constitution, said juries will decide these issues, not us.
Okay. The other side of that,
the government.
Aside from compensating the individuals, and again, someone who's lost the use of their legs, it can be priceless. So how much do you put on it? The other thing is, I wonder, the jury verdicts need to be big enough in cases that are that egregious, where not just that the individual is compensated to care for themselves the rest of their life, but I want it to get the attention of the people who commit these things. And you've told me, and I've learned this from you, that when it gets their attention, that's when it's corrected so it doesn't happen again. But if they can just say, well, that verdict, all right, we'll just pay that with our insurance and let's just business as usual. I want it so it gets their attention so they don't do it again. You
know what changes, Nick, is when they have to pick out the pen, open up the checkbook, and scratch out a big check whoosh, and pay it out.
Yep.
That's pain for them. That's their way of apologizing, but also hopefully the way that they'll change their practice. Your first note is talking about, quote unquote, whether there's an absurd verdict. My rebuttal to that is I think there are a lot of inadequate verdicts.
Yep.
A lot of inadequate awards where juries go too far the other way and undercompensate patients, but you don't read about that either.
No, and then you said that's an interesting phenomenon among jurors.
It does
correct?
happen.
You said that the mindset of jurors, even though we're all every men and women looking at a victim there that's trying to sue to get damages, and yet we end up siding as jurors with the corporations. And I'm not saying corporations sometimes don't deserve to have their side told, and maybe they're in the right, but a lot of times it's like you would think the natural inclination would be to look out for the little guy.
Yeah, it's really not that anymore. I do think jurors come into trials, most of them do, to try to be fair and try to do the right thing. I'm just saying that at the back of their mind, most jurors who come into court and hear a case where a patient's suing a doctor or healthcare provider are very suspicious of that claim. They scrutinize it heavily. They're worried about malpractice premiums. They're worried about whether their healthcare premiums are going to go up themselves. And so in my judgment, from time to time, they undercompensate patients because of those concerns, which to me, half justice is no justice at all.
Listen, we got to take a break. When we come back, we've got some phone calls coming in, 737-7587. Also, when we come back, last time Clint was on, sometimes when you hear from him, the more I do, it's like, gosh, I hope I don't get sick. I don't want to go to the hospital. Of course, we have no choice, but there's a question about how they clean the surgical tools and whether or not the items coming in are actually sanitary. And Clint kind of foresaw this, and he's going to tell us about a case when we come back that is a real scary situation, and you have to wonder about it with any hospital you go to next, and it's going to spawn more lawsuits. We'll take a break, be back with your calls on that story right after this.